There are over 550 million firearms in worldwide circulation. That's one firearm for every 12 people on the planet. The only question is, how do we arm the other 11?
Are you quite certain, Mr. Quigley, that you wouldn't like the bucket a bit closer? Quite certain.
Hello and welcome to the D6 Damage Gunslinger class analysis. Today I'm joined by D10 and D8. Say hi, guys.
What's up?
D8 here.
Alright, so if you're fond of having a little solid metal slug projectile in your fantasy setting, and why wouldn't you be, the Gunslinger might be the class for you. So guys, what are your feelings about the class? D10, why don't you start us off?
Well, personally, I love the class, though I just also really love westerns. And the Gunslinger seems to be like one of the best ranged classes, period, in the classes given.
I'll agree that it is a very good ranged class. Alright, what about you, D8?
I don't like the Gunslinger. I'm a big naysayer. But I will admit that my main dislike for it comes from not really wanting solid slug projectiles in my fantasy setting. As D6 was so fond to put it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Do you think it just doesn't fit the gestalt of the world, or you think that don't make sense?
I think it can. I think you can make it fit in the world. What I don't like is it's weird. It makes the whole world a little bit. You're straddling the edge of technology to the point of it allows the DM to get away with technology things like elevators and whatnot that you wouldn't normally get.
Aren't you already straddling technology with golems and...
That's all magic, though.
Well, yeah, golems, they're not robots. They're a solid piece of matter. It's really a carved statue that's been animated by magic.
But that's what I'm saying with when you allow guns into it, you're taking the step into the idea that maybe there are robots that aren't golems. Maybe they have a magical power source, but they're full on like circuitry and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think you're taking a step that I'm not really. I prefer a more traditional fantasy setting.
Okay, well, I can understand how it would be flow breaking because if you've got Legolas the archer, Gimli the guy with the big axe, Aragorn the guy with the sword,
and Clint Eastwood,
and Clint Eastwood shows up, be like bam, 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 just feathering the trigger as he downs orcs. It's flow breaking.
While it is cool, it is flow breaking, and I don't really believe that it. I think the concept is cool, but I don't feel like in execution it does the concept justice.
All right, now do you think early firearms makes it a little easier to stomach?
Yeah, it does. But I mean, I begin to question why there's not more of them around. Mm-hmm. And you're still running into early industry, essentially.
All right. So now let's dig into the meat of the class itself, starting with best practices for race choice.
Well, honestly, I don't think there's any race you could go wrong with as long as it has a dex bonus and or wisdom bonus.
Okay, I think there are races which are going to work with it a little bit better than others. Like, I think Undyne is a fantastic race class choice because they get +2 dex and they get +2 wisdom.
I'm a fan of the dwarf. One, because I think his stats aren't terrible for it.
Yeah, I'll agree.
And two, because I think if you are going to put guns in my fantasy, a dwarf with a shotgun is a great way to do it.
Groovy.
Okay.
Well, because they are the more technology focused
I get that, but his
they're the
groovy
craftsmanship. It's the shotgun. I think they do have that craftsman aspect to them, and I think that guns would make sense. If anyone was going to show up with a gun, it would be
a dwarf or maybe a gnome.
Yeah, gnome, I could see it with them too, but they're not well statted for it. For the sake of the favored class bonus, if your planning on using a lot of grit, I think human is a great choice because they do get that plus 1/4 of gunslinger grit point per level.
I think human is just the best choice all around. I think the extra feats, that extra feat at first level, will help you.
The skill bonus.
Because I think, the skill bonus. Because if you're not going to have a high intelligence, then you're going to need
a lot of ranks in craft.
Some ranks. But I really think if you need, because there's a lot of ranged. If you're going a ranged attack character, there are a lot of feats you need to get in order to really make it work, especially with a party. For example, if you don't have precise strike, you're not really working well with a party that has melee units.
Agreed.
So that extra feat at first level allows you to take point blank shot and precise strike right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. So that's an immediate viability.
Yeah, that's what I don't know. I personally think that human is probably the best way to go.
All right.
No, I still think that elves could have some fun with the gunslinger.
I agree, because that bonus to intelligence doesn't hurt them.
Yeah.
The bonus to dex is helpful. The bonus to intelligence is not harmful. That -2 to constitution isn't going to be that big a deal because it's not necessarily a melee unit.
Well, and you also have a fairly good hit die.
Yeah, that's true. You have a D10
and also, if you go with the Mysterious Stranger class, the gnome, halfling, and Asimar are also very good choices.
Well, with Asimar, they're broad enough where you can get a whole bunch of different combinations. Like, I'm sure there's one that's perfect for it.
Oh, yeah.
Because Gun Angel. Now onto the class features themselves. One of the iconic ones to the Gunslinger is the Gunslinger's Grit. This is a very useful ability that allows you to basically perform a number of special moves in combat.
Well, it's the core of the class. It is what makes the Gunslinger class different from a fighter.
All right, so guys, what are some of the deeds that you can perform with the Grit that you think are helpful?
Well, first and foremost, the Deadeye deed. That allows you to go against touch outside of your first ranging increment. And if you're using only early firearms, that is your bread and butter.
Yeah, it's really important. Because if you got that pistol and you only have a 20-foot range, you're going to want to be farther away from the enemy than that.
All right, I think we actually need to pause and discuss a feature of firearms which makes them incredibly helpful as ranged weapons.
Yes. Most early firearms, actually all early firearms, go against touch within their first range increment. The farther out you get, the harder it is to hit them. Though advanced firearms apparently can resolve against touch within their first 5 range increments, depending on DM disclosure.
Mm-hmm. So basically what that means is if you're going up against something which is just really super heavily armored, like a big dude in full plate, anti-paladins, or like one of those armored like dinosaur things. God, what are they called? They're like made of metal. They have claws.
I got nothing.
Okay, a bullet would be an example.
Yeah, I was going to say a bullet,
yeah.
But that's not what you're describing.
That's not what I'm describing, but whatever the hell those things are.
Heck, even dragons.
Yeah, dragons have a pretty nasty AC.
Yeah, they do. So, speaking of, if you're in a situation where the dragon is just flying overhead and buzzing you with his flame breath, Deadeye is a great deed to have.
Well, there's the other one that allows you to pick the body part. I like that one.
Oh, targeting?
Yeah, because if that dragon's flying over, you can target those wings. You can try to take it out of the air.
Yeah.
I think honestly that's one of my favorite deeds because it gives the Gunslinger the ability to do more than just shoot for a D12 or a D10 of damage.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be fair, everybody can target, but the targeting gives you a bonus for attacking those limbs.
Targeting comes in at 7th level, by the way.
And most of the best ones also come in at 7th level.
I think that is one of the relative weaknesses of the class, is that it doesn't take off until 5th level.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the bright side...
To be fair, most classes don't get off the ground until, like, 3rd or 4th or 5th.
That's true, but some classes have a much stronger early game than others, like Fighter. Strongest early game of any class. Really.
Well, that's the appeal to the Fighter.
Well, it's the same appeal to the Rogue. I think Rogue is actually one of the best balanced classes because it just continues to scale up.
Yeah.
It feels fairly decent all the way through.
Yeah, and which makes it look more OP rather than balanced.
Alright, so the next feature is called Gunsmithing. This is a utility ability of the Gunslinger, and basically what it means is if you have a Gunslinger's kit, you can repair your firearm, because firearms have a feature called Misfire. if you roll a 1 or another
Or
fairly
2.
low number or 2,
Depending
then
on
the
how-
gun breaks.
What shape your firearm is in.
Yeah, depending on what shape your firearm's in. So gunsmithing is a way to combat that.
You can repair it, you can make more guns, you can make ammo, you can even make black powder.
Yeah, all that's really important because you're probably not going to find someone who's going to be able to sell you those things.
Now, I think that this is one of the features of the class where I get, a little bit of the does this make complete sense in the setting? Because if you've got something like an advanced firearm, like, are you actually making the cartridges yourself? It gets kind of odd.
That's another reason I like the dwarf, though, because it's less of an intellectual leap to assume the dwarf is making his own cartridges and things like that.
Yeah, but I mean, does he have a forge with him? Does he
if he's a
carry it
dwarf,
with
I
him?
guarantee he has a portaforge.
Portaforge.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're crafting your setting, you should think about things like, how exactly do we get things like the brass that the cartridges are made out of? And that also applies to arcane casters, like how readily available are the components for your wizard spellbook?
Well, not just arcane casters, but divine casters as well. Where the heck are they getting those diamonds to revive people?
Okay, well, that's a little bit different. We're talking about things that don't have a specific material component cost. For something like a diamond, you gotta go get a diamond, kind of like in-game. Or at least that's my preferred way to handle it.
Well, diamonds aren't that rare.
Yeah, diamonds aren't that rare, but still, they only appear in certain places. You could, in a big city like Corvosa from Galarian, you could conceivably buy diamonds there.
Yes, you could. There has to be a jeweler there.
But if you're, like, out in the boonies...
At least one.
Yeah.
But if you're, like, out in the boonies somewhere where, you don't have a lot of good options, it's like, where exactly do we get things with... Like, where do we get diamonds? Like, if you're raising the undead, where do you get your onyx gems for it?
Yeah. I think the most important thing to consider is that when you make the jump from early and simple firearms to advanced firearms, you are now in an era where producing bullets and cartridges is not something that can be done easily. And it's not something that can be done without expertise.
Well, that's the gunsmith feat. You have the expertise to make it because you developed it.
But that means you also need to be able to make the cartridge. Do you have the experience at a smithy? Do you know how to make
Smith
forge?
is in the feat title.
Spellsmith, housesmith, anything smith. A smith is just you make things.
Okay, so how they break up the crafting is they break it up by what exactly it is you're making.
My personal favorite, alchemist. Sorry.
I'm just saying, the feat implies that you have the expertise and the tools to do this already.
It does, but when it comes to making a metal cartridge, that is a circular metal that is brass normally, which is already a compound of copper and zinc. Mm-hmm. No, copper and tin. And you have to be able to make a perfectly round and smooth shell. And then you have to be able to make it have the firing pin and primer to work.
Yeah.
And then you have to have the bullet that's shaped so that it actually fits. My point
I'm pretty
is...
sure we're not making 21st century bullets. I mean, I'm pretty sure even the Old West bullets were rough around the edges.
They were a little bit, but they were very sophisticated compared to muskets.
My point is...
It's like at the Colt Factory. He had an actual factory.
It was a factory, is what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying by you have to assume there's a level of technology that goes with firearms.
And another thing...
Every step of firearm that you go up, you have to assume that the world's technology is also going up.
Yeah, and that potentially applies to NPCs, evil organizations, like an evil lord with an appropriate amount of money. Like, does he have, snipers working for him or that sort of thing? And let's also not make the mistake of considering these all to be, no, this is bad about the class. This is a problem. Either you fix it or you don't get to play. It's an opportunity, too. It
certainly is, because there's a lot you can do with it to make it more fun. And it gives, medieval lords, or evil noblemen who are oppressive, they're going to have like 30 guys with muskets on their payroll.
Yeah.
Then they just, set up in the middle of town and shoot down the protesters. Like,
or it gives you an opportunity to create a setting, like the village of people who figured out gunsmithing, and they're just mass producing the things.
it also makes low-level NPCs rather dangerous. Because now they can hit you on touch.
Yeah. It also gives the party a really easy way to make a lot of money quickly if you're playing that kind of game. Because firearms go for bucks.
Yeah, because they are nearly the most expensive mundane items.
The point is the more complex technology that you have in your gun, is the more there has to be an assumed level of technology in the world.
Now let's move on to Nimble. This gives the Gunslinger a +1 dodge bonus to AC when wearing light or no armor. I think this kind of puts them into the world of ranged characters with light armor. If they want to make good use of this, they're not going to necessarily be in the fray with a really high AC.
Fair. There's the one archetype called the gun tank, and this is the only part I'm going to talk about it, because it's a really simple archetype. The idea is you have heavy armor, and it's really silly, and I think it's really cool, and you get proficiency in tower shields, and I think that opens up some fun opportunities. So if you wanted to do a gunslinger that was more melee based, that made use of the pistol whip ability they get, and things like that, there's an archetype that allows you to go heavy armor. If you're going to make most use of Nimble and the Gunslinger Dodge, which gives you AC against range attacks, then you are going to want to be in light armor, and you're going to want to lose that penalties to your stats, and you're going to want to be in the back range.
The Gunslinger also gets a number of bonus feats as they progress in level, and this is important because it is a feat-intensive class. Finally, the last feature we're going to talk about is gun training. This is one of the things which I think really does make the Gunslinger one of the best ranged classes in the game. So with gun training, when you get it, you pick a type of firearm, like a musket, pistol, that sort of thing.
I think you can even do scatter weapons.
Well, you can do the blunderbuss.
Well, there's also the Dragoon pistol.
Yeah. So when you get this, it gives you a bonus to your damage rolls equal to your dexterity modifier. And this removes one of the most obnoxious things about ranged combat, where you're basically put into a situation where it's like, I hit him, I roll my d8, I got a 1.
That's 1 damage.
One whole damage.
Congratulations.
I'm sorry, he has DR. Well,
shit.
Exactly.
Like, you're out of luck, bud. I agree. I don't particularly support ranged combat in Pathfinder. I think you're at a disadvantage if you're doing ranged combat.
I mean,
I will say, for those of you who are listening that have had experience in the editions of D&D, such as 5th edition, they do give you much more ability to make that damage count as a ranged class. For Pathfinder, you really have to work. You have to get a lot of different feats. You have to use a lot of different class features, like gun training, in order to make your damage output good. And with the Gunslinger, who has to reload every turn for those early firearms.
Yeah, unless they get like rapid reload, which gives them swift action reloads.
No, it gives them a move action reload.
No, one-handed firearm is a move action reload.
Oh, okay.
With rapid reload, it's a swift action.
Okay, with one arm. I was thinking muskets. You're not going to be able to do the multi-shot and stuff that you can get for bows.
That's why they also introduced Dead Shot.
Let's talk a little about Dead Shot.
Basically, Dead Shot gives you the ability to pull all your potential attacks into one, and basically add more damage die to that one attack.
So I had a lot of trouble understanding what this kind of meant in the world, in the fiction, but I think I've figured it out now. And the way I see it is, it is essentially you're just doing basically like a trick shot to do extra damage kind of deal. But what you're doing in fiction is you're lining up the shot and then shooting your one bullet and making it count for as damage as many attacks as you have.
Yeah,
so you're not shooting more than one bullet.
Like, you're going for that one really weak spot to debilitate the guy.
The point is, you are only spending one bullet, despite the fact you're making more than one shot.
Okay, so to give you an in-game example is you're fighting, like, some big armored dude, and you take a moment, line up your shot.
On its eye.
Yeah, or shoot for a spot where the armor's been dented repeatedly because he's been fighting with the barbarian, and just punch right through that.
Yeah. So it's a cool ability that allows you to essentially... you get it at 7th level, I think. Right?
Yeah.
And so you get to add a set. Now when you shoot once a turn, you're doing 2d12 or 2d10.
Or 2d8.
Or 2d8. I mean, it's good.
Potentially,
it's good for ranged characters.
Potentially, since it counts as a full round action, a DM could allow you to use rapid fire to gain an extra one and a -2 to every shot. Again, that's dependent on the DM.
I guess you could make the argument. I'd say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I personally don't think a dead shot is good enough to warrant playing a ranged character.
Alright, so guys, to end the video, I want to ask you kind of what characters you think of when you're thinking about a gunslinger, and just where would you draw inspiration from? Let's start with you, D8.
Clint Eastwood in The Good, and Bad, and the Ugly. I don't remember what the character's name is.
I think he might be the man with no name, although that might be a different one.
Well, he's only done like 4 billion of them.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, one thing I think of is I like the idea of this dwarf with a cigar in his mouth and this big old blunderbuss and like a helmet and stuff, and he's like, yeah.
Okay, so he's
boom,
the Sergeant Iron Fist.
Yeah, something really cool like that. I'm a huge fan of the gnome with a gun that makes him fly backwards every time he shoots. And
so
things
kind
like
of the mad tinkerer who's built this
would either go with
in his lab.
I would either go with the mysterious stranger kind of, not the archetype, just that kind of personality, or I think what is more fun to go with the completely insane gunner, which I think is more interesting.
All right, D10, same question.
The people I think of, well, in terms of pistol-wielding gunslingers, are like Han Solo, Vash the Stampede, Malcolm Reynolds, and for musket users, Riza Hawkeye is the only one that comes to mind for me.
Alright, so my feelings on the gunslinger and the characters that I would go to are formed by a lot of 80s action movies, and movies which are throwbacks to 80s action movies. Like, I would love... Yeah, Seagal.
Steven Seagal.
Seagal would be awesome.
Lethal Weapon.
Yep.
I could totally see Lethal Weapon characters.
Yeah, I'd like to do Judge Dredd. Just like, boom,
like
the RoboCop would be a great one.
The original... oh gosh. The one with... Oh, I can't believe I'm doing... the Yippee-Ki-Yay.
Oh, yeah.
See, you're...
Damn it.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Bastard, you did it to me.
What is it called?
Die Hard.
Die Hard. Yeah, I shot a kid. A black detective who accidentally shot a kid. You know, these guns are so... That's another thing you could go with it. The guns are such a powerful influence on a world because people with no training can use them. The idea is they are so dangerous, especially early firearms where aiming was, out the window anyway, that you are giving essentially someone who has no experience and no understanding of the consequences of action the power of like a wizard to use Searing Ray.
And that's why I usually go with gunslingers that try to safeguard their gun designs and secrets so that can't happen.
Well,
for as long as he can allow.
For as long as he's... Yeah, I'd agree to that. The point is you can go with this idea of someone who's absolutely terrified of his creation, but he's still going to use it.
Yeah.
That's another direction you can go.
Yeah, the last two movies I'll mention are Equilibrium, because I love the idea of this gunslinger who's like so incredibly precise. He's calculated out all the angles, and he can basically gun-fu his way through fights. And John Wick, where you just mercilessly beat people with the gun and then headshot them.
I don't know. I can see some fun with like the deeds and the dares and stuff. The John Woo midair doves fly past, time slows as you line up your shot, and bam, take it.
Yeah, well, I think how you would do that is you would roll like a d6, and get a bonus equal to like your charisma modifier to see how many doves
just
show up behind you.
I like the idea of you're in mid-air and you're lining up. It's like that would be a cool gimmick to pull off like once a campaign or something where the gunslinger is falling. Like he is going to hit the ground at some point, but he lines the shot up in mid-air.
If you're jumping off like a hot air balloon and you can conceivably
shot.
blow up the entire thing.
Yeah, you know, cool guys don't look back at explosions,
Yeah.
but...
Well, like you're facing it, but you're going to just turn around in mid-air. All right, thank you for watching the D6 Damage Gunslinger's Guide. I'm D6.
I'm D10.
And I'm D8.
If you're interested in more character, class analysis, or strategy guides for Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder, check us out right here on YouTube.